What is going on, everybody? And this video is going to be my thoughts on the Gears of War 4 campaign. Now, I was really looking forward to Gears of War 4. Gears of War is one of my favorite game series of last gen. In fact, it actually holds a special place in my heart because the first Gears of War game was my first introduction to the last gen when I first got my Xbox 360. And to me, every Gears of War game that followed after the first game, to me, just got better and better. There was a slight bump in the road after Gears of War 3, which that game's irrelevant, and we will not talk about that game. But here we are, back with another Gears of War game with a new development team. Now, of course, it's got some old members from the old Epic games. So it's not completely a new development team, but there's still some new people, and it's a new company. So how did they do with this game? All in all, I think they did a solid job with Gears of War 4's campaign. With that being said, though, and I have to be honest here, there were parts of the campaign that just really disappointed me. Now, some of you are probably not going to like hearing that. And that's perfectly understandable because I don't like saying that. But you get honesty from me all the time. And I have to be honest here. There were parts that just really disappointed me. And it made me wonder what they were thinking by adding this stuff in. But before we get into that, we are going to get into the positives of the game. First off, the graphics and the sound. Both are top-notch. It feels like Gears of War, it looks like Gears of War, and it sounds like Gears of War. All of that excels. And they did add in some new stuff in the game. They added in some new weapons. Although, to me, they seem kind of pointless. At least in the campaign. Maybe they're not in multiplayer, but in the campaign they kind of felt pointless to me. And every time I picked one up, I always thought, I'm probably just going to be better off using the classic weapons that I know. And honestly, sure enough, I was. Now, then again, maybe that's just me not being good with the newer weapons, but that's just how I felt when playing it. Maybe they work better in multiplayer, I don't know. Now, there's the story. Now, I'm not going to give away any specific spoilers in the story, but I thought the plot of this game was pretty good. It's nothing truly groundbreaking, but it was good enough for Gears of War. And the ending of the game, it left me wanting more. It left me wanting to see what happens next. And that's a good thing. Now, you can say it probably ended in a cliffhanger, and some people don't like cliffhangers, but I think this is one that worked because it makes me want the next game. And I hope they make a next game. They probably will. I don't know what I'm thinking there, but so I thought it worked. And there was a part in Act 5 later on, and I'm not going to give away any specific spoilers, but there was a part in that act that I just marked the hell out, and I got really, really pumped up. Some of you who played this will probably know what specific part I'm talking about. So overall, I thought the plot and the story was good. Unfortunately, we now have to discuss the negatives. The DBs. The DBs are probably the biggest negative for this game. Now, when they first unveiled the DBs, I knew right then and there this was going to be a problem. When I was watching videos of DBs, to me, it just screamed laziness, and it was very uncreative of Coalition. Like, to me, when you just throw robot enemies in the game, just randomly, with no logical reason, it just screams like you just have no creative ideas. And that's what I think the DBs were. And when you actually fight them in the game, it just isn't interesting at all. The DB AI is stupid. They'll just walk around like zombies, and they just won't care. You can pick them off so easily. And honestly, some of these are carbon copies of Locust enemies. Like, for example, remember the tickers? Remember the tickers from the older games? Well, this game has trackers, these little rolling spears that explode. They're pretty much tickers. They literally just copied Locust enemies and turned them into robots. And once again, that just added on to the laziness. Now, I can understand why they exist, because it makes sense within the universe, in the context of the universe. But I think they could have done a lot better job of making them more fun to fight. Because it was just a grind. It was a bore to fight them. And literally, the first quarter, maybe to half of the game, you were fighting these DBs and nothing but the DBs. And honestly, if it wasn't for probably around the beginning of Act 3, I was honestly close to writing the game off because I was just that uninterested in playing. And to me, that is why I always say gameplay is more important than anything else. Because if you're not having fun playing it, none of that other stuff matters. Graphics, sound, plot, none of that matters if you're not having fun playing it. And I was that close. But once Act 3 came around, and you start fighting the swarm enemies, which, to be honest, they're kind of like reincarnated Locust, the game starts to pick up. Because the swarm AI is 1,000 times better than the DB AI. They know when to stay in cover. They know where to go to cover. And a lot of times they won't even peek out unless you move. The AI on the swarm is vastly superior to the DB AI. It's almost like there were two different teams working on these groups of enemies. And that's what it feels like. So there's that. Now, another big negative with this game, and this is another big one to me, is there was literally no chemistry between the newer players. Or, excuse me, characters. There's one of the things I love about the older Gears games is that the chemistry and the funny banter between the older characters. Marcus, Baird, Dom, Cole, they all had a lot of funny lines in the games. Even little bits where it's not really major, but there were little bits that just made you laugh anyway. Like in the first game when Baird has to truck through a sewer with Dom. And his reactions to everything, it's just hilarious. There were lots of parts in the older games that just made me laugh. There was none of that in this game. None of that. The only time there was ever any time where I chuckled a little bit was when you finally meet up with Marcus, who is an older character. But there was none of that with the newer characters. There was none of that with JD, Kate, or Dell. Kate, she's an okay character to me. Dell was just, he's like pointless. Honestly, it seems like he just like, I don't know why he's there. It's like he's just there to be there. He's not funny. He has no character. And then there's JD, who is pretty good. But these three just don't have any chemistry at all. And when I was playing the game, there was a lot of times where there were funny lines, or there were lines written down that were meant to be funny, but they just weren't. Because it just felt forced. It didn't feel organic to me. So, to me, that just didn't work at all. It just didn't. And that's very disappointing. But, I mean, I don't understand it. I just don't. I don't understand how that happened. That's one of the best things about the older games is the chemistry between the characters. And it just wasn't here for these new characters, at least to me. So, a couple other things. I did not like the horde sections of this game where you had to set up fortifications and then fight waves of enemies. That stuff works in horde. It just doesn't work for campaign. I don't know why they added it in, and they added it in multiple times. It doesn't belong in campaign to me. It just doesn't. And then there was the lightning portions of this game where you had to dodge lightning. I'm sorry, maybe that's just me, but I thought those parts were incredibly pointless and very annoying. It just really didn't work because it seemed like the lightning just was heat-seeking. And I was playing on normal difficulty for my first playthrough. And that thing was just tearing me up. I can only imagine how much damage it'll do on Insane. I'm not really looking forward to that on my Insane playthrough. But it just, like, along with the Horde portions, it seemed like they just added this stuff in for filler. When it just really didn't need to be added. You should have just kept it the way a Gears of War campaign is supposed to be. Just moving along in a linear path and fighting enemies and then moving to the next part and then maybe occasionally fighting a big enemy and then a boss. That is all you need to do. That is just all you need to do. You don't really need to add in this pointless stuff. So, I think that's about it. And I hated doing that. I hate talking about negatives of a game I was looking forward to, but I just have to be honest. And although I still think Gears of War 4 campaign is a solid experience, and I definitely recommend you playing it, especially if you're a Gears of War fan. If you're a Gears of War fan, this is just a must-play. At the end of the day, I just can't help but be disappointed. And honestly, if I were to rank the Gears games in terms of my favorite to least favorite, it would be Gears 3, Gears 2, Gears 1, and then Gears 4. The other games are irrelevant. It's not even ranked. So, alright, that's about it. Please let me know what you think about this video, and until next time, have a good one.